from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the, where are we? Wednesday night edition of the program. I never know what day it is at night. Anyway, welcome, folks. Our phone number, 866-505-4626. That's our legacy line. If you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. If you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, happy to be here with you. And the big question of the day, it's been the question of the day, the question of the week, I'd say, will he stay or will he go? Joe El Baboso Biden. Seems like there's a lot of people saying he should go, others saying that he should stay, some people questioning whether they should use the 25th Amendment to get rid of him. And it's interesting because not that far back, there was a bunch of Democrats calling for the 25th Amendment on Trump, saying he's mentally unfit for office. And I just find it's interesting because now, fast forward to today, you've got Nancy Pelosi, who's very, very bitter, very, very upset, snapping at reporters, asking questions like, am I speaking English to you? And it's telling, I think, in my opinion. Pelosi today snapping at a reporter, this is pretty funny, asking if she's speaking English. Listen to this.
Do you believe that him waiting so long to make this decision?
I'm not going to make any comments in the hallway about the fate of our nation, okay?
Are you concerned whether or not he can win in November?
I think he can.
Do you believe he should run for re-election?
I'm not speaking English to you. I'm not going to be making any statements about any of that right now in the hallway.
She's not making any statements in the hallway, just like George Stephanopoulos didn't make any statements, right? And now he's like, well, because, I'm bad, yo. So, yeah, anyway. Nancy Pelosi also went on to be on the Morning Joe show today, right? The Morning Joke, as we like to call it here, the MSNBC program hosted by Joe Scarborough, refusing to say if Biden actually had her support. Listen to this.
Madam Speaker, you just went through the president's record, but let me ask you about the current moment. Does he have your support to be the head of the Democratic ticket?
As long as the president it's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short. I think overwhelming support of the caucus. It's not for me to say. I'm not the head of the caucus anymore, but he's beloved. He is respected, and people want him to make that decision. Not me.
He has made the decision. He has said firmly this week he is going to run. Do you want him to run?
I want him to do whatever he decides to do, and that's the way it is. Whatever he decides, we go with.
Sounds like she knows he's going to bail, and she's like, look, whatever he decides, we got his back. But she definitely won't say anything. And like a good politician, I'm not mad at her, but I just think it's interesting. You would think this is a member of your political party that's literally the sitting president and running for president. You would think she'd be a little bit more enthusiastic, yet she's saying, I don't know, whatever he decides to do. I mean, it's really telling, right? To think that this guy is literally president of the United States right now. And that's the level of enthusiasm that Nancy La Bruja Pelosi has for Joe El Baboso Biden. Very telling indeed. If I were him, I'd be ashamed. If I can't get Nancy Pelosi's support, whose support can I get? Well, like I mentioned, back in 2017, you had all of these Democrats calling for the removal of President Donald Trump using the 25th Amendment back in 2017, saying he's mentally unfit for office, and he never, ever, ever had a performance like Joe Biden had during the debate. Listen to this one.
This is scary. Hashtag 25th Amendment.
The president is not equipped to do the job.
So now they're saying he's mentally incapacitated. And more than 24 Democratic lawmakers are backing a bill that says he should leave office.
Should he be removed from office?
His brain is simply incapable of processing the information, emotionally, psychologically unstable. Initiate proceedings to remove the president.
You and several of your Democratic House colleagues met with a psychiatry professor from Yale, Dr. Bandy Lee. She told CNN today, quote, as the president is unraveling, he seems to be losing his grip on reality and reverting to conspiracy theories.
Dr. Lee and other psychiatrists who've been up to meet with members of Congress have been predicting increasingly delusional and paranoid behavior on the part of the president. The president is dangerous and unable to successfully meet the powers and duties of office. We got serious stuff to deal with, and instead we're caught up every day in what looks like the country debating the mental health of the president. So it's a very dangerous and unstable situation. The issue is, what is our institutional responsibility as the U.S. Congress? And we've got that under the 25th Amendment. Everybody should go and read it.
No, Trump needs to be medicated and hospitalized at this point, or he is going to just kill all of us.
People are talking about the 25th Amendment, and they're saying he's just not mentally fit to be the president. And I think if you're doing this, I mean, is there a mental fitness problem? We all know the ramifications of nuclear war.
Can Americans be concerned about the president's mental fitness?
This president is not fit.
This is 25th Amendment kind of stuff
that should have already activated the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to remove the president as unfit to serve under the 25th Amendment.
And invoking things like the 25th Amendment. You know, they brought in this Yale psychiatrist.
Watch the president closely. Is there a case to be made for the 25th Amendment?
Specifically under the 25th Amendment, president's not fit for command.
Thought, oh man, he's really having some problems here.
That's where the 25th Amendment thing started to come up.
Fitness for office. Could the 25th Amendment be Trump's downfall? Here's how it works.
You
believe the president
and the reason that I bring it up, obviously, is because it's in the news today. But isn't it interesting how they're not making any of these calls for Biden? How instead they're saying, no, whatever Joe Biden decides is fine with me. Whatever he decides to do is fine with me. Meanwhile, Trump never had a performance like that, right? They made everything up. Or how about the time Trump had those fancy leather shoes on and gave the speech at I was going to say Hunts Point. He gave the speech at West Point, and there was a ramp, and he had to go down kind of slowly so that he would not slip because he had these leather-soled shoes on. And they said, oh, Trump is not fit for command. Trump is all messed up. Trump is this and Trump is that. When he had the good sense to not fall down this slide thing. And it was an unending attack on El Trumpito. But when it comes to Biden, it's like, no, he's fine. He's fine. He had a bad night. Oh, he just had a bad night. And, of course, there's always a double standard in the media. But this double standard is one like I've never seen. And what's more interesting is how they're giving him the white glove treatment. So I think I stick with my original thoughts, my original prediction, that Biden is the nominee. I don't think he's going anywhere. I thought they might try to swap him out, but all he's got to do is stick around and kind of lay his head down, stay out of trouble for a little bit, and show up for Election Day because they're not going to push him anywhere. Unless they treat him the way they treated Trump, Biden's got no reason to go anywhere. Listen, we'll see. I mean, maybe he'll come out in a couple of days and say, all right, you know what, folks, for the benefit of the country, I'm not doing too great. I need this, I need that, or I decide I'm not going to run. We're going to hand it over to President Harris, who he's been calling President Harris for a couple of years, and actually allow her to become president, which is probably his best shot, the Democrats' best shot of saying, look, because of Joe Biden's leadership, we have a female president, first ever. Because of Joe Biden's leadership, we have a black woman president, and we need the rest of America to step up and bring her across the finish line. Who's going to do it with me, right? But I don't know if they're going to do that. But that would be, I think, their best shot. Because Joe Biden's not it. Nobody's enthused. Anyway, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what's happening with NATO. There's a bunch of conversation around NATO. Lots to talk about this evening, so I want you to stick with me. And of course, our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Looking forward to your calls as well as we navigate through our topics and guests this evening. We got a lot to discuss. I am pumped up and energized, so don't go anywhere because we're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
There is more news in your commentary, in your analysis, than there is on the news network.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And I wanted to, there's so much to talk about. Just during the break, my buddy, one of my closest friends in the whole wide world, his name is Juan. He sends me a thing about George Stephanopoulos. And he's like, unbelievable, right? What's going on? Like big face palm emoji on what's going on with George Stephanopoulos. And I thought, things are definitely bad when George Stephanopoulos is saying things on hidden camera to TMZ about Biden not being able to serve another 4 years. Now, it's short, but it's sweet and it's to the point. Listen to this.
Excuse me. Hey, how you doing? What do you think? Do you think Biden should step down? You talked to him more than anybody else have lately, and you can be honest. You don't think he can serve 4 more years? All right.
Yeah, he doesn't think he can serve 4 more years. That's George Stephanopoulos. Now, very telling, right? George Stephanopoulos is a close Clinton ally. He's been a staple in Democrat politics for a long time. When I say the left within the media, I mean him and so many others. And just interesting that he says he doesn't think he can last 4 more years. Now, why is that so interesting? The whole world can see that, Rich. You're right. They can. We can. And we have. But we've never seen the left admit to it, right? It's always been, no, you're a maggot. You're a right-wing extremist that wants to push the Bible and deny the gays and this and that, right? All the things that they accuse me of and you and everybody else that they don't like. But when you look at what's really happening here, this is their establishment, the left-wing establishment, really collapsing. Every last bastion of security that you see amongst Democrats, their I'm going to say their safety net, right? Guys like Stephanopoulos. Imagine The View. Imagine the day where somebody from The View, like Joy Behar or Whoopi Goldberg, decide to say, we don't know if Biden can make it. Well, they don't know. Right? Just imagine, I'm not saying that happened. Just imagine. It would be a big deal. So that's very interesting to see that Stephanopoulos is telling the truth when he doesn't think anybody's looking. And George Clooney even is interesting, his view saying he thinks Biden should step aside as well. So I think all of that stuff is interesting. I really do, because when Hollywood turns on you, it's like, oh, man, well, what else is going on? A whole lot. Now, there's also a clip of Biden on NATO that I want you to hear, because Biden is, the last couple of days he's been talking about, he invented NATO, he helped put together NATO, he taken all sorts of credit for things, and all I could think of is, up until Biden came around, things were a lot calmer in that part of the world. Yet, now that we have Biden, we've had a war there forever and a day. So listen to Biden and his take on NATO.
We've doubled the number of battle groups in NATO's eastern flank, and the United States has. Finland and Sweden have joined the alliance. And the number of allies spending at least 2% on defense has gone from 9 to 23.
That's Joel Barboso Biden. And this is, of course, his his speech. He's talking about what's going on with NATO at the NATO summit. You've got all sorts of people moving to counter Russia and really kind of support Ukraine on this. And to get the best analysis on this, being that, I've never even been to Russia, I figured let's call our good friend on this program, former Deputy Representative to NATO for the United States Air Force Brigadier General Blaine Holt. Welcome back, sir.
Sir, it's great to be with you. I hope you're doing wonderful on this evening of the 75th NATO summit. What an amazing summit it truly is.
I hear that, brother. Yeah, listen, 75th NATO summit. I spent the whole day in the sun, so I'm toasty. I am very toasty. I have a great tan, and I'm relying on you to bring me up to speed on what's going on. I feel like a lobster over here. So, General Holt, retired General Blaine Holt, tell us what's going on. Joe Biden, the last couple of days, has been taking credit. I put NATO together. I am NATO. I mean, the things he says, they blow me away. What's your take?
Yeah, he built NATO, if you ask him. But the thing is, the statistics they're putting together are quite funny to me because these are really the winnings of President Trump. President Trump, on the first NATO summit that he attended when he became president, I talked to the president about this because I could not believe his very unconventional way of dealing with NATO, which I thought was perfect. He went in and he was very quiet in the group of all the heads of state, and he didn't say much. And then when he came out on stage for the group photo where everybody's supposed to be pleasant and loving each other, he pushed Angela Merkel out of the way, and he called them all deadbeats. And we have been trying, when I was serving at NATO as the deputy U.S. representative, we had been trying for the dickens to move their political machines, and we couldn't do it. President Trump did it in 5 seconds, and he threw away 23 years of staff work of us trying. And what he did was he shamed them publicly, which they were repulsed by it. But it took years through their legislative processes and systems to actually get to the 23 countries he's talking about. And I can assure you from talking to the president since that he has every intent of not aborting NATO, but saying these are serious times and we need to get back to defense, deterrence, and we need to get back to you all having a fair share of the burden here at the alliance. And I can, from talking to him and from talking to people at the Heritage Foundation, I can tell you they're on a clear path to get that done. So President Biden can say what President Biden wants to say. Most people are worried that whatever he says is going to have a lot to do with grasshoppers. And I come from Scranton, but that has nothing to do with what we really see before us. What's happening before our very eyes is the harvest of President Trump's personal investment in NATO, despite the rhetoric, is now coming to fruition. Now all we need to do, and the European elections indicate this, is that we need to get the globalists and the elitists and the neocons who never saw a war they didn't like out of the equation, and we need to go peace through strength.
Amen to that. Folks, we're on with United States Air Force Brigadier General Blaine Holt. He's retired, former Deputy Representative to NATO for the United States, C-17 Commander, tech entrepreneur, senior Newsmax contributor, and co-founder of Restore Liberty. We're coming right back with him. We're going to talk about Iran sanctioning U.S. police chiefs and more. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The director of U.S. National Intelligence warns Iranian agents are using cyber and social media to stoke protests in the U.S. in an effort to divide Americans. Avril Haines writes, these agents are posing as activists online, seeking to encourage protests and even providing financial support to protesters. Josh Reinstein, president of the Israel Allies Foundation, says the Iranian threat is greater to the West than it is to Israel.
Around the world, Iran is also attacking countries in Europe,
through different organizations, through funding terrorism in America. They actually tried to assassinate several American leaders like Mike Pompeo and John Bolton.
As it prepares to begin its nominating convention next week, the Republican Party is pledging support for the Jewish state and to hold accountable those who perpetrate violence against the Jewish people, as well as revoking visas of foreign nationals who support terrorism and jihadism. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
That was a really good report, and I appreciate it. But I couldn't help but think when they were talking about it, about Iran, saying that there's a threat to assassinate various American leaders like Mike Pompeo and others, Ambassador Bolton, I thought to myself, isn't the top of that list President Donald Trump that still has an active threat against him? It's just amazing how they overlook things in the media. Folks, I want you to help me welcome our guest back, Brigadier General Blaine Holt, retired from the United States Air Force. General Holt, when you hear a report like that, does any of that surprise you?
No, not at all. In fact, it's recycled news. We've known about that hit list for a while now, and it's interesting that they're rolling it out. And what I have been saying lately is, it seems to me that it's really cover your butt season. That all the officials in the administration, they know bad stuff's on its way, and so they're trying to get their sound bites and their blurbs and their testimonies out to say, I warned you about this. No, I told you about this. I said this was coming to you. And then when we have the bad thing, we'll all be shocked, and we'll say, oh my gosh, there was gambling in the casino. And we'll all, oh Lord, what happened? But we've all been tracking this. This is not new. But what this is quite a smokescreen for what's really going on, which is the Democratic Party has itself a little mini civilian or a civil war going on while they sort out who the actual nominee is going to be. You've got President Biden who's saying, I'm not leaving, I'm never going, don't worry. And Ukraine.
Right.
And so that's where we're at.
Unbelievable. Now, this is an interesting place to be, because I think you've got a bunch of major leaders, right? And when I say major, I think establishment types like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, they're not out there beating the drum saying Joe Biden's the best thing since sliced bread. We love this guy, and he's going to be the president. Right. None of them are saying that. Right? Nancy Pelosi's saying, I think if Joe wants to run, he should run. If he wants to get out, he should get out. It's just so fascinating to watch this. And you look at that, and I think, man, this is not good for the Democrat Party. But it's also, I think it's not good for America, because it creates a vulnerability that our enemies like Iran and others can exploit.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. So that's the key issue. We are feeding on this Biden frenzy right now here at home. We're looking at NATO, which is consternating about the next super weapon or the next tactic to really stick it to the Russians. So those are tactics, but strategy is altogether in a different universe. And what I worry about is that's where our attention is completely pulled away from. So while we were looking at Biden and the bombings in Ukraine, this is what Russia and China were really doing that matters. So 5 days ago, they turned on their BRICS Plus pay system. Now, that sounds quaint. It doesn't sound very important, except for the fact that it's going to replace the entire monetary system, and they want to do it by the end of the summertime. That pay system is a digital currency system to get rid of the U.S. dollar in its entirety as reserve currency. And already countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran and South Africa and India is in Moscow today talking about how are we going to do this in a way that gets rid of the U.S. dollar as trade. Now, let's live in a world where the U.S. cannot print its way out of its problems. And I will tell you, we will be in a very, very different country than before. And so we're not looking at what chess looks like. And the summer where that comes, we're really, really arguing about what's the best size bomb to send to Israel and what's the best size bomb to have in Ukraine.
This is a big deal. And this is something we've talked about on this show before. And the big question, and I've talked about this with colleagues of yours like Gordon Chang and others, who say there's a threat with BRICS. However, until they agree what that currency will be, it's hard to solidify what the threat looks like. When you hear these reports that they're moving this way and they're moving that way with BRICS, what do you think they land on? Do they land on a crypto? Do they land on a particular one particular country's currency?
Yeah, no, it won't be one particular country's currency. So, because when you look at the two big dogs, Russia and China, they're actually not very big dogs. In fact, their currencies are in real trouble, and China economically is in real trouble. But when you look at the amount of gold that they're buying and that they want to make this a gold-backed consortium, when you look at the absolute resentment of the now 40-plus BRICS countries towards the U.S. and our monetary policy to get after what we want, now let's overlay the technology. So you've got the people who are supposed to be on our side, the Bretton Woods-spawned Bank of International Settlements, hosting this platform for central bank digital currency, and the BRICS plus pay system will replace the SWIFT system, and they now give a sexy feature that even people in our country will like, which is no politics, apolitical. There's no social media score. You come on in, and we treat you fairly, and so they're really, really looking to make the disintermediation. What a lot of people don't understand, though, is that when we look at what our liabilities are, our national debt are, we go immediately into financial crisis if they're able to achieve this. And people are not looking at this because it's kind of hard to understand, but they're getting their act together. And you can tell by the amount of gold that all of them are buying. Wait a minute, here's the last piece that makes it really bad. The West is betting on this too. So folks like the Rothschilds Wealth Fund, the usual suspects at the World Economic Forum, hey, guess what? They're investing into this. So they're playing on both sides of it. And meanwhile, we're worried about, does our president understand the difference between a banana and an apple? And we're worried about what's the next drone that we're going to be able to ship to Ukraine. That's where we're at, and so we're in real trouble right now.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you, and from every angle, I'm tracking with you, and I felt that way, and I still don't believe that they ultimately eat our lunch. I know they want to eat our lunch. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for the United States to really stand up and say, all right, nice try, but we're going to do this. As long as we do that, I don't know that happens with a President Joe Biden. So we have to wait a few months until something like that can actually happen. But it makes sense to me that the United States needs to do something in terms of changing our monetary policy. And I spoke about this probably over a year ago now with Steve Forbes. And his take was, absolutely, we need to go back to, at minimum, tying our currency to the gold standard, where we may not even have this gold in the bank at Fort Knox and whatnot, but tying it to the gold standard would give us something stable. And my question to him at the time was, well, how easy is that to do? Is it Congress? Is it this? And his take was, no, it's not that hard at all. We can just do it. Do you think that is a solution or the solution, or do you think we actually need to have a gold-backed dollar where we have physical gold, the way these countries are, stacking up gold?
Yeah, I'm with Steve Forbes. I think he's absolutely right. He's one of the greatest economic minds of our time, along with Art Laffer. And what I think you'll see from a President Trump when he sits in his seat and is confronted with this is, rather than making it adversarial, I can see President Trump embracing it and saying, great, awesome. How do we play? We're in.
Right. How do we make it U.S. BRICS? U.S. BRICS.
How do we get our foreign policy out of this thing? We get it. We've heard you. You're tired of our getting coups across the world with our monetary policy. We're sick of it too. How about we sit down at the table and find out where's our seat at the table? And we're a big dog. I think he sits there, and it gets back to his book, The Art of the Deal, which is, you're not going to do this without us, so let's get us into this. And where are we going to play? Where we sit now is an administration that is, we're at war with everybody. Let's go have a war, and we'll sanction you, and we'll sanction your people, and we'll sanction your little children. That's ridiculous. What I believe President Trump will do is, okay, I see the world's going in a different monetary way. we have some cleanup to do too. Let's get ready for that, and let's work with everybody. You know what? That approach actually lessens the chance of war.
All right. Let's pause right there. We'll come right back with Brigadier General Blaine Holt, former deputy representative to NATO. I also wanted to touch on this story I saw that 11 different police leaders, like chiefs of police, were sanctioned by Iran. Want to talk about that? Plus, I think this whole BRICS thing is fascinating, and I agree with you. Should we get a Trump presidency, which, God willing, we will, I totally see Trump going, great, I love your BRICS. BRICS are terrific. How do we take over? Make it U.S. BRICS. I totally see something like that happening. Folks, we're coming right back with General Blaine Holt. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez live with you till 1 a.m. Eastern time. If you're listening on the West Coast, well, great. I'm glad. And it's not that late for you. If you're on the East Coast, it is a little bit later over here. And we're having a discussion on all sorts of things with retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt. We're talking about NATO. We're talking about all sorts of stuff. And General Holt, the talk of the town today is NATO. It's the 75th NATO anniversary summit, yada, yada, yada. But I think when we hear about that and we think of those things, we really think about what will Joe Biden give away next? How much money? What kind of weapons? What's going on with? And again, I'm all about supporting Ukraine. I really am. I'm young enough or old enough to remember the Budapest memorandum of security assurances. I forget the actual term, and I understand that we have a responsibility to help Ukraine with their security. However, I don't know that we have a responsibility to help Ukraine take our money, right? and it's a catch-22, right? But all sorts of things are happening there. And meanwhile, you've got Iran that's threatening police chiefs and police leaders in the United States for breaking up protests, these Hamas protests on college campus. The whole thing is just so bizarre to me. But I feel like we're living in the pettiest and weirdest twilight zone of days when I look at these things.
It is absolutely bizarre unless you look at the administration and you ask yourself, who are they beholden to? Now, when we look at the facts are that under the Biden administration, Iran has never been richer. Iran has commanded over $100 billion in trade as a result of this administration looking the other way. Wait a minute, that's not different than what the Obama administration did. They've put the mullahs into business. And we've not only done that, we've distanced ourselves from our ally. And we've allowed Iran to build these hit lists on our people here while we try to claim that we've got some sort of undying love for Ukraine. Yet we had a deterrable war before it started. There was a peace agreement on the table after it started. And now we have nothing but money and weapons going to no strategy and a World War I style death camp where over 500,000 Ukrainian men are gone. So what is the strategy? Wow. And that's what everybody has been asking. And so let's take a little small vignette, a vignette that was brought up heartily during this summit. We're going to get Patriot batteries to Ukraine. We're going to get them Patriots from every country, and we're going to do that. You know what? Those are billion-dollar systems. They're fixed on the ground, and there's a finite number of those missiles. They all cost millions of dollars to produce, and the Russians have found them, targeted them. Why wouldn't we employ an innovative approach to protect Ukrainian lives by bringing things like the MQ-9 Predator, which has proved itself in Afghanistan, the Reaper, and arm it with the missiles, the AIM-9X Sidewinder, that could provide missile defense for pennies on the dollar in a persistent way over the airspace. So I can't help but wonder who's benefiting in the industrial base rather than let's look at the military aspects of this and find out what's required. My heart is with the Ukrainian people. They are facing a terrible aggressor. But then where's the strategy and the innovation that American know-how brings to actually put them? We all saw shock and awe. We all saw what we did to Saddam Hussein. So nobody should pretend that we don't have the ability to do this. And yet we play this little theatrical game at NATO headquarters, and it's nonsense. So money, weapons, great. Where's the strategy? Where's the diplomacy?
Is this a tactic to feed the quote-unquote war machine, the military-industrial complex, or is this just vast ineptitude from Biden?
It's all of the above, and that's what got me through high school, was answering D to every single question I had put before me. But this is what their approach is, and they say these loving, undying things on TV to invoke emotion and passion. However, Europe is not buying it. Look at the elections that just happened. Except for the France nonsense that was engineered by Macron, the globalists and the elitists and the neocons, they're all losing because Europe has said we would like peace, not World War III. We would like prosperity and an economy, and we actually don't hate the Russian people. We would like to all live in harmony. Okay, that's them. What's happening over here? Go find a poll where Biden or anybody in the Marxist socialist democratic camp is winning. They're not because Americans want their country back. They want inflation gone. They want their borders sealed, and they want the invaders out. And so that's not too much to ask in normal good governance. And that's where this country is on its way to. And I don't even think you could cheat your way out of this problem. I think that America is really awake, understands what's going on, understands that we're in a very dangerous place. And again, you've heard me say it before, Rich. Churchill said, you can always trust the Americans to do the right thing after they've tried everything else. And, brother, we've tried everything else.
Amen to that. Blaine Holt, if you don't mind, stick with me for just a couple more minutes. I want to wrap up with a little bit of your thoughts on Joe Biden and what happens politically moving forward. Folks, we're coming right back with General Blaine Holt.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez with you live till 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Our guest, General Blaine Holt, who is, or was, I should say, the rock star of the show at a dinner I went to in New Jersey a couple of months ago. It's called A Seat at the Table. And General Blaine Holt and Gordon Chang and others were speaking there. And I got to tell you, I was talking to General Blaine Holt afterwards, and he was just a real rock star. There was a line of people that wanted to meet him and talk to him and take his picture, and he was really, really a hit. Blaine Holt, tell us what you think happens with Joe Biden.
I appreciate that. It was a fun event. So this is what I think they're doing is you're going to see President Biden saying and screaming, I'm in the race. I'm in it for the long haul. Nothing wrong with me, while the Democratic machine figures out what's really going to happen. And I think Hollywood is giving you an indication of what's really going to happen. So you got Clooney, Douglas, and all of them. We're going to get a new candidate, and we'll see who that is. Yeah.
Amen to that. Retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt, thanks for being with us tonight. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you, brother. Take care.
All right. Amen to that. All right, folks, we continue with our discussion on the heat, mental health, Joe Biden, and more. Don't go anywhere. I am Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Our telephone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Looking forward to taking your calls a little bit throughout this hour, and of course, definitely in the next hour for Open Phone across America. And I want to talk about a few things. We just talked about NATO and a few other hard news stories. Another big news item today was and has been for several days, this heat wave. Now, I don't know what part of the country you're in, but there's a heat wave in New York, New Jersey, bad air quality, all sorts of stuff. And you've got this temporary heat wave is really, really pushing a lot of rain, again, in my part of the world, New York, New Jersey area, but all over the place. I'm looking at reports out of Vegas, right? Las Vegas sets record for number of days over 115 degrees Fahrenheit. And I've been seeing similar stories coming out of the West Coast. So clearly it's been a warm summer, and that's fun. Listen, I've been having a good time. I'm not the outdoorsy type per se, but I love a good beach. I definitely love a good beach. I'm a sand guy, not really an ocean guy. I like looking at the ocean, hearing the waves crash, but I enjoy hanging out in the sand and working on my tan. That's kind of what I do. But I was hanging out at let me see, where was I? I was in a rooftop pool. A buddy of mine lives in a fancy building, invited me over, a couple of friends, and I was enjoying this rooftop pool. Really, really cool. Lots of fun. And great views, too. And the water, I don't know, had to be like 85, 90 degrees. It was really good water. It was a really good time, and I was really enjoying it. But I wondered to myself, what do we do the rest of the days of this heat wave when I don't have this fancy pool to come and take a dip in? And for me, the heat brings a time of fun, right? It reminds me of my childhood. I remember the warmth. I remember going to Coney Island. I remember going to Manhattan Beach or Brighton Beach. Fun times. I have always enjoyed this summer because, in this area, it gets warm in the summer, and we love that. But there's a lot of people that get a little irritable. Some people get hyper irritable when it's really hot outside, and they're just like, "Arr." And this has an effect, and it takes a toll. And some people are making a pilgrimage to Death Valley, California, to brave the heat wave. Listen to this.
If anything, the extreme heat is actually piquing the interest of even more tourists and adventurers out there as they want to sample that suffocating heat for themselves. Video shows hundreds of tourists flocking to Death Valley National Park in California to feel that extreme heat. Now, experts recommend what they call sampling the heat to avoid the dangers. That means driving up to the visitor center with your AC on, getting out for a picture, and then getting right back in the car. Although the triple digits may be fun as a memory or maybe a social media post, it can be extremely dangerous. Just this past weekend, 6 motorcyclists were riding through the park. One of them actually died. Another was hospitalized, and 4 others were treated for heat-related conditions. As we know, Death Valley is considered one of the most extreme environments in the world, and visitors are sharing how that heat feels.
It's like a wave that hits you when you get out of the car.
And this is where the heat finally really hits you. You realize just how hot it is. You start sweating, and it feels inescapable.
Usually a breeze is cool. This is not a cool breeze whatsoever.
Yeah, no relief in sight. The hottest temperature ever recorded was 134 degrees in July of 1913 in Death Valley, but some experts are disputing that and saying the real record was 130 degrees reported in July of 2021. So if that's the case, that record has been broken this year, but either way, there's no disputing that it is definitely hot outside. In studio, Talia Cunningham, Fox 31.
134 degrees. Let me tell you something. I don't know what kind of air conditioning you need in your car to feel cool in 134 degrees. But, man, I can't imagine getting out of my car and going, wow, this is so awesome and awe-inspiring. I think I would have mental health issues because of 134 degrees. So you won't find me in Death Valley, California. But needless to say, the heat is affecting people. And I want to talk about that. And overall, I want to talk about mental health, especially as we look at the state of affairs in our White House and what's happening in our country and the upcoming election. Mental health is a big focus for a lot of people. So I want to bring in one of our faves, Dr. Vince Callahan. He's a mental health expert, founder of the Florida Institute for Neural Discovery, which is FIND-FL.com, or you can check out his website, drvincecallahan.com. He's the author of the book, The Family Handbook, which contains 101 practical tips for families. Dr. Vince Callahan, welcome back, sir.
Thank you so much for having me back on the show. Love your show.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you staying up late, where I know a lot of people are sleeping at this hour. You're here talking to us about mental health, and it means a lot to me and so many millions of Americans that are listening. So, Dr. Vince, let's chat a little bit about this, because I would think you definitely need to have a mental health evaluation if you're driving to Death Valley, California, and hanging out in this 134, even if it's arguably 134 degrees. What is going on here?
Yeah, that's a little bit on the crazy side, to use that clinical term. I don't know why you would want to do that. I guess the same kind of people jump out of good airplanes and climb mountains that, whatever, I don't know. But I couldn't imagine going out there just to experience heat. If you want that kind of heat, stick your head in the oven, I guess. I don't know. But I couldn't imagine doing that. But heat really impacts our mental health. It impacts our mood, our ability to concentrate, our sleep patterns. It makes us feel overwhelmed and stressed out. It makes us feel more tired. And, of course, it makes us more angry. And so that's why you see an increase in road rage during the summer months, because people are just stressed out because of the heat. And it's amazing what's going on in our brains. We've talked about a little bit that stress brain thing, but the heat actually, in a subconscious way, is like a predator to our brain. And so we go into that fight, flight, or freeze mode. And when that happens, we're dumping cortisol and we're in survival mode. And if our normal go-to is fight, then we've got the rage going on, the anger going on, and we're just stressed out.
Now, I don't think you have to be in Death Valley, California to experience that. Obviously, you're talking in generalities, and I agree. I think, for some people who aren't used to that heat and don't like it, and look, I don't necessarily like the heat. I enjoy warm weather for sure, but 134, 115, that's not my thing. That's why I don't go to Puerto Rico during the summer, because it's just way too hot. But I realize that just like so many other things, the heat and these heat waves that we're seeing all over the country in different areas can definitely contribute to somebody feeling more irritable, more, stretched thin, if you will. And that goes, I think, hand in hand with everything else, right? Shows like mine, news every day. So George Clooney saying to dump Biden. There's just so much stuff out there that I think can get people out of sorts. And I know you do this for a living and have done it, in your practice before you became a scholar. But what do you tell people that are, knocking on Dr. Vince Callahan's door saying, hey, we're all messed up here? How do you advise them?
Well, I tell people, first of all, be really cognizant of your core temperature. It's okay if you're running 99 to 100 and you're all right. But when you start getting 102s, 103s, you're now getting past heat exhaustion and you're going towards a heat stroke. So I tell people, first of all, kind of build a heat tolerance. And you can do that very simply by adding 5 minutes being in the heat over about a 3-week period where you just kind of get out there just a little bit more. But if you really have to be out there. But otherwise, one of the things that I talk to people about, believe it or not, is their medications. There are a lot of psychiatric and mental health medications that the heat actually nullifies their efficacy. So it's almost like you're not even taking those meds when you're out in the heat. Yeah. So if here you are, I'm on depression meds or anxiety meds or antipsychotics or whatever, and I'm out in the heat. If you haven't consulted with your doctor, it's very likely that your meds aren't even working like they should be working, which means that here we go back with your concentration and your moods and your attitudes and your behaviors and your road rage and all those kind of things because your meds aren't working.
Scary stuff. Dr. Vince Callahan, I want you to stick with us. I want to continue this conversation with you. And, folks, I invite you to join the conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. We're coming right back with Dr. Vince Callahan.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
My hands across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So are Joe Biden and the Democrats and their policies making Americans mentally ill? I don't know the answer to that, but there is a new study out that says living in poverty is indicative of mental health problems. This is a study out of the University of, let me see here, Amsterdam University Medical Center at the Edinburgh University and the University of Moderna. And the study indicates that certain mental health problems can make a person's financial situation uncertain. But conversely, we also see that poverty can lead to mental health problems. And that's according to Marco Box, a psychiatrist at Amsterdam University Medical Center. And that makes all the sense in the world to me. And it made me think, you know, Joe Biden's policy on inflation and everything else might be making us mentally ill. I think it's probably more true than not. But what I find it interesting here is that they're actually studying this relationship between poverty and mental health issues. And it goes on. It goes into, you know, looking at data between ADHD and schizophrenia and how that contributes to poverty as well. Apparently, if you were raised in poverty, you're more susceptible to either or. I did grow up in poverty. Maybe that explains why I have ADHD. I don't know, but I'm bringing in the big guns. Dr. Vince Callahan from drvincecallahan.com is our guest. Dr. Vince, what do you think?
I am with you 100%. And the reason I go there is because I've researched this for the last 14 years. And when you get into the stressed brain and what kids who are impoverished go through and the level of stress that's put on their brain because of that poverty, they have one of three things, unless their trajectories are changed, which that can happen. But kids who grow up in this poverty situation and deal with abandonment and food issues are either A, likely to be in prison, B, develop psychiatric disorders, or third is to get divorced and become addicts. And so there's relationship between ADHD, ADD, and that impoverishment. There's relationship between schizophrenia. There's relationship between all of that because of what happens in the brain because of the poverty. So yes, right now you've got Americans who are so stressed out because they can't buy their meds versus buying food. And so that's why you see suicide rate attempts going up. You see increased mental health issues going up. We've got, since COVID, we've got a 66% increase in teen suicide attempts.
Isn't that crazy?
So, yeah, it is. So, yeah, all of that's interconnected. When you start looking and doing a deep dive, I'll go even one further with you. The same brain that is a stressed brain child who grows up in that environment, that brain, when they get older, is the exact same environment in the brain that's in Alzheimer's and dementia.
Wow.
Direct
How do we
correlation.
Fix it? Good policy? Put money in people's pockets?
Actually, no. It's not about that. Well, but yeah, that's one thing that can help. But it's really about, and I know this is going to sound so simple, but it's really about who we attach and connect to and what we do with our purpose of our life. We can be poor but connected to people and not feel poor. And since COVID made us become independent and become islands unto ourselves. and we've seen a spike in mental health issues. And now you see more poverty, you're going to see more spike in mental health issues because of the nature of the economy. And I know that this is a conservative show, but I feel bad for where our country is right now. And what I saw in that debate and the level of neurodegenerative disease that's in our president, I'm not his physician. I can't make the diagnosis, but I know what I see. And I know, based on research, what I know. And when I see those kinds of behaviors, it makes me kind of cringe.
Me too. And Dr. Vince, I share it all the time. I was a caregiver to my dad who had what they call TBI-related dementia from a traumatic brain injury he had. And I so much from the way he stands to the way he walks, the way he shuffles his feet, just so much, the way he pauses, that aphasia, all of it I've seen my dad go through. And I think, I'm not you. I'm not a PhD. I'm a radio guy. But I've seen this stuff, and it looks the same as what I've seen. And all I could think of is we're not in good shape if the president of the United States is, in the same shape as my dad. I would never vote for my dad to be president, right? I'd vote for my dad any day of the week. God rest his soul. But I wouldn't make him president.
Yeah, my father sat in his car until his core temperature went to 105, and he had a heat stroke. This was about 18 months before he passed away. And the loss of cognition that I saw due to the heat stroke is the same parallel loss of cognition I see in our president. So I'm not saying he's had a heat stroke. I'm saying there is a neurodegenerative disease in the White House that we know is being covered. It's being propped up, and our country needs a change. Whether you like Trump or not, or whatever, we need a change. And I'll just leave it at that. I mean, people can make their own minds up and, vote and those kind of things. But we can't be led by someone who is in this condition. I think that's ridiculous.
I agree with you. And it's interesting how, the cabinet and those that are entrusted with the responsibility to invoke the 25th Amendment haven't, which is it's really remarkable. They were trying to do it to Trump when he was fine. Yet now, this man's clearly in need and not well. And I get it. I guess he's likable and they don't want to, toss him out. But I think there's a whole fate of a country that stands in the balance. Now, Dr. Vince Callahan, let everybody know how they can find you, how they get your book, and how they can learn more about the wonderful work that you do.
So the easiest way is drvincecallahan.com. That connects to our main website. On that website, there is a free book called The Family Handbook. I sat down and for the last 6 months basically took my 38 years of practice and put 101 basic tips for families that I just pulled out of what I've done so much as a professional. And it's a free download. We don't capture email addresses and we don't sell you information. It's just there totally free, 100%. It's a great way to talk to your family.
Outstanding. Make sure you go get that, the Family Handbook, at drvincecallahan.com. Dr. Vince, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Got to do it again soon. Folks, we come back to more discussion. We're going to talk about what's going on with some of the leadership lessons we've learned from our president. Don't go anywhere.
This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And we just wrapped up a good conversation with Dr. Vince Callahan on the state of mental health in America, not the least of which was talking a little bit about how that impacts Joe Biden, right? President living in the White House. And it really is a remarkable situation that America's in. There's a doctor that was on NBC News yesterday. He's a Parkinson's doctor. And he says that Biden has classic features of the disease and they could have diagnosed him from across the mall. His name is Dr. Tom Pitts, and he was on with Tom Yamas yesterday. Listen to this.
It's ironic because he has just such classic features of neurodegeneration. I mean, word finding difficulties, and that's not, oh, I couldn't find the word. That's from degeneration of the word retrieval area.
He's also overcome stuttering, though. Could that be part of that, too?
No, this is not a palatal issue or a speech discrepancy, which is very different from a lemino dysfunction, actual word retrieval, where you pick a similar question or talk around the issue, plus the rigidity, monotone voice.
Wait, go back to that, the rigidity. What do you mean?
Rigidity, loss of arm swing, standing up lordically. You notice when he turns, it's kind of end block turning. It's not a quick turn. So that's one of the hallmarks of Parkinson's is rigidity and bradykinesia, slow movement. And he has that hallmark, especially with the low voice that said was a cold. Ophonia, a small monotone voice like this over time, is a hallmark of Parkinsonism. I could have diagnosed him from across the mall.
Wow. That's pretty heavy duty there. But it doesn't stop there. It gets political, too, right? You've got James Carville, the Ragin' Cajun, who says that if Biden runs, it's an idiotic choice for America. Listen to this.
And I think like Senator Patty Murray, who's been in the Senate for over 30 years, and the fact that she came out and said this speaks volumes as opposed to what people say in front of a camera. So I still think I'll stand by my thing that he won't run, but if he does, we're just making a idiotic choice for the future of our country. And I can't help but believe that. And the proof's in the pudding. They're moving states away from us. We're losing. We're not winning. And when we lose, America loses. It's that simple.
Now, that again is the Ragin' Cajun, James Carville, advisor to President Bill Clinton, very famous for saying it's the economy stupid. Longtime political advisor. And when I look at history and presidential history, I can't think of a time in my lifetime, maybe perhaps prior to my lifetime, but not in my lifetime, where we had a president that was this visibly challenged in the mental health arena. But I want to bring in a presidential historian. He's also attorney with Shackelford, McKinley, and Norton, to talk about this. He's been on the program before. Talmage Boston is the author of the book, How the Best Did It, Leadership Lessons from Our Top Presidents. Talmage Boston, welcome back, sir.
Rich, glad to be on your show.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And something that I alluded to with our previous guest, who was a mental health practitioner, about the 25th Amendment and why the cabinet isn't invoking it. And I realize that's not something anyone will take flippantly. But from the historical perspective, I feel like, if we don't do it now, when are we going to do it? What do you think?
Well, it all depends on the vice president and half of the cabinet. And the only time they're going to, on their own, turn against a president who claims to be okay, who insists on continuing to run, he's got to be comatose. He's got to be in a vegetative stage before they're going to be so bold as to say you're not able to serve anymore. And, of course, that's the way Woodrow Wilson was after he had his stroke in the last more than a year of his presidency when his wife basically took over. It was because of that 4 decades later, the 25th Amendment came to be passed. But the way it works is it's almost impossible under the 25th Amendment, unless somebody's comatose, that a vice president is going to tell her boss, her president, no, I know you're walking and talking and speaking at NATO conferences and George Stephanopoulos interviews, but you're incompetent. They're never going to do that. So right. The 25th Amendment is not going to be used under this circumstance unless all of a sudden Joe Biden has a horrible stroke and is on a machine to keep him alive.
So, save the 25th Amendment. Other than that, it doesn't seem like there are a lot of options other than being challenged in the upcoming Democrat National Convention.
And that's not likely. I mean, all these delegates who were chosen in the primary supporting Biden, they're committed to vote for Biden unless, quote, in good conscience they can't, which most of them won't have the courage to do, even though now we see what happened today with George Clooney. The most serious supporters of Biden, who 2 weeks ago were raising tens of millions of dollars, now recognize that he's not fit for office. And Clooney writes an editorial in the New York Times today saying, he can't do it anymore. He's not the same guy he was in 2020, which, of course, everybody who's been paying any attention already knew. I don't know why when he saw the fundraiser 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he says he saw it then, and yet he didn't say anything. Had to wait until after the debate debacle
when everybody saw
before
it.
People, you couldn't miss it.
Unbelievable. Folks, we're on with Talmage Boston. He's the author of the book, How the Best Did It, Leadership Lessons from Our Top Presidents. Now, Talmage Boston, I'm going to guess that Joe Biden is not going to make the pages of your book for his leadership lessons, will he?
No. I mean, that's one of the most amazing things, that all these pundits in the media who are saying, well, on the one hand, he's been a really good president, but on the other hand, he's really doesn't have the brain power anymore. If he's been such a great president, why does he have 37% approval rating? Right. I mean, this is absurd. This is a man who let the border go, who did the disastrous withdrawal of Afghanistan, whose economic policies fueled this massive inflation that's hurt America all over the country, and yet people are acting like he's been a good president. I mean, it's absurd. I mean, the Wall Street Journal, Barton Swaim had a good editorial last week, said infirmity is not his biggest problem. It's his bad judgment. I mean, you look at his entire political record, and he's always gone back and forth and does not have a good record at all of making good decisions or good policy decisions, and yet people acting like he's been a really good president, which is absurd.
Right, yeah, otherwise. Yeah, totally. Good point. That's the truth. Folks, we're on with Talmage Boston. We're coming back, and I want to get his take on why 1 in 3 Democrats think Biden should quit the race. That's a poll by Reuters. Don't go anywhere. Again, our phone number, 833-482-5337. Open Phone America, starting at the top of the next hour. Get your calls in now, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation on Biden's mental fitness with our guest, Talmage Boston. He's the author of the book, How the Best Did It, Leadership Lessons from Our Top Presidents. And Talmage Boston, I want you to hear this. Rishi, not Richie, but Rishi Kumar, he is a Biden delegate. He was on CNN yesterday predicting a bloodbath if Biden actually runs. Listen to this.
If Biden ends up running, potentially the Democrats could lose the Senate, the House, and the White House. And it's going to be a bloodbath. The blue states that we have held for many decades might potentially turn red. Trump is doing well when he runs against Biden in those states. And then the swing states, the battleground states, they are looking terrible. So at this point, all the polling indicates that Trump is going to win. So we need to send the best and the brightest out there to run against Trump. He's beatable, but we need to send somebody who's got the energy of a commander-in-chief. Here in Silicon Valley, we have had great leaders, and companies thrive because of good leaders. At this point, it's debatable if Biden can lead our nation. You know, carrying the nuclear football is a huge deal. And we're not sure right now if Biden is going to be able to do his job.
Talmage Boston, this is a big deal, right? A Biden delegate going on CNN to trash him like this. What do you think?
Well, it is surprising that a Biden delegate would be so honest, but after you've seen the debate, after you've seen the Stephanopoulos interview, I don't see how anybody could draw any other conclusion. And all the polls are showing that the needle is moving toward Trump and away from Biden. That's obviously going to hurt Democrats down the ballot below the presidential election. You also see so many prominent donors who are now saying, I'm not giving any more money. In fact, I heard somebody say after the George Clooney fundraiser, if I was somebody written a check, I'd say, I want my money back, George. You and Julia Roberts were there saying that we ought to write big checks to Biden, and then 2 weeks later you're saying he's not fit to be president. I think you owe me my money back. And you're also saying that he was that way at the fundraiser, the same way he was on the debate. Well, of course he was. He's the same guy. So obviously it's up to Biden whether to pull back. What will it take for him to withdraw? Obviously his wife and his son are saying, no, we got to stay, we got to stay, we got to stay. They kind of like being first lady and living in the White House and riding on Air Force One. But the bottom line is, what's in the best interest of the American people? Can we have somebody who can't complete a sentence he can still read a teleprompter? So every time he gets on TV and gives a speech where he's reading a teleprompter like he did on the State of the Union, like he's done every time, he can still read aloud a teleprompter. But he can't complete a sentence extemporaneously. He loses his train of thought. His eyes go blank. His face becomes an empty vessel. You know, the doctor on NBC said, no, this is Parkinson's. This is pure Parkinson's. You can't miss it. And to pretend otherwise is absurd. And for this California delegate to say, well, it's debatable whether he can serve. It's not debatable. There's no way in the world this guy could serve 4 more years.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's just so interesting that what you said originally, that a Biden delegate would be so honest. And while I laughed at it, and it was very clever, there's a reality of that, right? Why are they being so honest? And that's the part I really haven't figured out, other than they need to tank him now in July and August so that, you know, come September, October, November, they can push out a better candidate. I just honestly, I don't see the switch happening. Do you?
Well, I think it has to happen. I think it will happen. I think at some point Biden will withdraw, and I think it may well be within the week, because for all Democrats, the number one priority is to defeat Donald Trump. And with each passing day, it becomes even more and more and more clear there is no way in the world Biden could beat Donald Trump. And so they've got to switch horses. They've got to change their strategy. And with each passing day, today you see New York is now in play. A historically blue state who nobody even thought was a swing state. All of a sudden, Trump may win New York. And so all the dollars are going to have to go into New York that they thought were going to go into the swing states. And this is the situation that Biden is putting them in. So I wrote a column for the Dallas Morning News that I'm a contributing columnist for a week ago, saying it's going to take a Barack Obama and a Schumer and a Pelosi and a Bill Clinton to come out publicly, not privately, publicly, and say he is not able to, he can't do it for 4 more years. We need to switch horses. Public statements, those kind of things, even Joe and Jill Biden cannot ignore. The writing will be not only on the wall, but it'll be wrapped around their heads. They'll know that, and my column for the Morning News today, for Biden to hang in there, and I even quoted Maureen Dowd of the New York Times saying, Biden clearly isn't running to beat Donald Trump or trying to. He's running for his own ego. He knows he can't win, and yet he won't withdraw. I mean, this is a man who has no idea of what's in the best interest for the American people. And so I ended my column today saying, whatever legacy he may have had that was favorable in anybody's mind, with each passing day, his stock is sinking.
That is so true. And it seems so desperate. And I would love to, honestly, I'd love for him to come on the show and I could ask him. I would love to know what's going through his mind, why he could have totally not ran and said, you know, I'm going to hand this over to Kamala, the first woman president, the first black president, the first everything, you know, the first black woman president, but chose to run again and make this mockery for himself, for his party. Just seems like a really bad look. Talmage Boston, stick with us. We're coming right back. I want to get your take on one more thing before we let you go. Folks, again, the phone number for Open Phone America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
But whatever else can be said about crooked Joe Biden, you have to give him credit for one brilliant decision, probably the smartest decision he's ever made. He picked Kamala Harris as his vice president. No, it was brilliant because it was an insurance policy, maybe the best insurance policy I've ever seen, Marco. If Joe had picked someone even halfway competent, they would have bounced him from office years ago, but they can't because she's got to be their second choice. She has no choice and no chance.
That's former President Trump at a rally in Doral, Florida yesterday, saying Biden's smartest decision ever made was picking the best insurance policy, a.k.a. Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States. Talmage Boston, what do you think about that?
I think Trump's right. And I think everybody who's been paying attention knows that Kamala Harris is an empty suit. She's incapable of being president. She was chosen vice president for one reason, identity politics, and it's come back to backfire because she is going to be the successor because of the way the money works and because as a woman of color, there's no way they're going to leapfrog over her with another candidate. And her approval ratings are as low as Joe Biden's. And so Trump's in the driver's seat, and the Democrats have no one to blame but themselves. Joe Biden has no one to blame but himself. And so as much as Democrats would like to have open primaries, you see Clymer say that, you see George Clooney say that, they all would love to have other candidates. They're not going to. They can't leapfrog over Kamala Harris. And Harris's 4 years, quote, her record, where she was given responsibility for the border and did nothing, where she's been involved in no significant policies, she's been nothing. And so there's nothing to get excited about with her as a successor, and yet she's got to be the successor. They can't avoid that.
Yeah, 100% right. Now, Talmage Boston, I agree with you 100%. This is they've got themselves in a really bad spot, and Biden was brilliant in choosing Harris because she tried to run for president. Failure to launch doesn't even describe it. It was a really miserable campaign, and now here we are. So I think your assessment was probably right. At least this week or maybe the next week, we have to see this change happen if it's going to happen at all because of timing. But ultimately, I thought it was going to happen Monday, right? I really thought we wouldn't be here on Wednesday talking about Biden still running for president. I'm amazed that it's stretched out that long, but I think you're right that it's coming sooner rather than later. Folks, Talmage Boston is the author of the book, How the Best Did It, Leadership Lessons from Our Top Presidents. Check him out. Check out his column as well. And Talmage, let them know where they could follow you.
Well, the book's available on Amazon. I have a website, TalmageBoston.com. I'm a contributing columnist for the Dallas Morning News. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn if you want to follow that. So, and I've enjoyed being on your show, Rich, and let's see what happens in the next week.
Yes, sir. We'll do it again soon. Thank you for being here. Folks, we continue with our conversation on Open Phone America straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. This is the third hour of the show. We call it Open Phone America, where you get to call in and share your thoughts on everything. And I love this part of the show because we get to have that free exchange with so many listeners from all over the country, and I love that. If you disagree, you get moved to the front of the line. If it's your first time, we'll also move you to the front of the line. And, of course, I'm always looking forward to speaking with all of our regulars that call in faithfully and religiously. I love that. And the number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Now, in hour number 2, I played a clip from a doctor on regular NBC, and his name is Tom Pitts. He's a Parkinson's doctor. He was on with Tom Yamas, and he said that he could diagnose Biden from across a mall with Parkinson's. But he went on, and what he went on to say, I think, was equally as shocking as the first part of his statement. Listen to this.
Well, I also know, tell me if I'm wrong here, it's very hard to diagnose Parkinson's, isn't it? It's not simple. I mean, I've heard that it can be.
It's one of the easier movement disorders to diagnose, actually.
Right,
but it's so clinic. There's very little other. And I'm a Democrat. I always say about this.
Right.
It's just like, this guy is not a hard case.
But I've had relatives who have gone through neurological issues, and I've heard that sometimes Parkinson's is not very easy to nail. You have to take a lot of tests.
It's early on. If you're just presented with like hallucinations, that could be a variety of things, or just the cognitive problems. That could be Alzheimer's versus Parkinsonism, and that becomes a little nebulous. But once you start manifesting the hallmark motor symptoms,
right?
Slow movement, rigidity, mass facies, hypophonia. I mean, if a med student did not pick Parkinson's on the test, they'd be remediated.
So let me ask you, if you had, and I know you have no idea what happened in the White House, but a neurologist coming 8 times in 8 months, does that tell you anything? Is that, I mean, I know you're just sort of speculating here, but does that tell you anything or no?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they're like the best of friends or something, but that's a very specific, he's a movement disorder. That's a subspecialist in exactly what he has. And there's very few young people, like a Marine Guard. Most people would be med boarded out for any type of movement disorder at a young age. Like if you had Huntington's chorea, early onset Parkinson's, dystonia, bad essential tremor, you're usually med boarded out. So I highly doubt there's...
What does that mean, med boarded out?
Med boarded, I mean, the military would not let you, if you have seizures, for example, you cannot usually be in the military.
There you go. Again, that's Dr. Tom Pitts, specialist in Parkinson's, not holding anything back, right? You've got Yamas there telling him, well, I've had family that whatever. And he's like, nah, man, this is pretty clear. It's one of the easiest ones to diagnose. When you know, you know. And it's something my dad always told me, right? El que sabe, sabe. And clearly, this guy knows what he's talking about. Now, I'm not saying he's diagnosing Biden. He said that himself in the original cut. And I'll play that one for you, too, just for the sake of context for anybody who's joining the conversation now. But the first part of this, Dr. Tom Pitts is on with Tom Yamas saying how easy he could have diagnosed this because of all of the telltale signs. Listen to this one.
It's ironic because he has just such classic features of neurodegeneration. I mean, word finding difficulties, and that's not, I couldn't find the word. That's from degeneration of the word retrieval area.
He's also overcome stuttering, though. Could that be part of that, too?
No, this is not a palatal issue or a speech discrepancy, which is very different from a lemino dysfunction, actual word retrieval, where you pick a similar question or talk around the issue, plus the rigidity, monotone voice.
Wait, go back to that, the rigidity. What do you mean?
Rigidity, loss of arm swing, standing up lordosically. You notice when he turns, it's kind of en bloc turning. It's not a quick turn. So that's one of the hallmarks of Parkinsonism is rigidity and bradykinesia, slow movement. And he has that hallmark, especially with the low voice that said was a cold. Ophonia, a small monotone voice like this over time, is a hallmark of Parkinsonism. I could have diagnosed him from across the mall.
Now, I think this is very, very telling. And I'm going to take exception to this because so much of what he's talking about, I experienced my dad who never had Parkinson's. All he had was a traumatic brain injury and what's the other word? I'm forgetting now. Dementia, right? What they call TBI-related dementia, not Alzheimer's specifically. So it was a slow neurodegenerative disorder, whereas Alzheimer's is more rapid in the degeneration of one's brain. And so much of this, right? Bradykinesia, tardive dyskinesia, all of these things. My dad had all this, and they did at one point think it was related to Parkinson's until they figured out it was the medicine he was taking to prevent seizures from the brain injury that were causing all of that. So I could see how there could be a differential diagnosis and confusion there. Now, this guy is clearly the Parkinson's doctor. I'm not. I'm just saying I take exception because my dad was just as rigid, didn't swing his arms anymore after his brain injury. There was a lot. There was a lot that he didn't do. That same thing he said, the way Biden turned, my dad did that too. He didn't turn his neck. He turned his whole body, shoulder to shoulder. It was just one big movement, right? Because there was a lot of things that were different. He shuffled his feet. He didn't lift them. It was, again, look at Biden. It was so similar. And again, it wasn't Parkinson's. Now, when you add this with the Parkinson's specialists showing up at the White House, and then the White House covering it up and then putting out a letter later saying, no, that's normal. That was, part of his physical. You tell me the last time you went for a physical and you had to see a Parkinson's specialist as part of your physical. So I'm not going to make any determination there. But do we all agree that Joe Biden's not in good shape and maybe does have Parkinson's? Yeah, probably. He's not in good shape. And I'm splitting hairs just for the sake of splitting hairs. But the reality is Biden's in bad shape and he needs to move aside. And he honestly shouldn't have ran in 2016. And if I were Biden, that's the case I would make. I'd say, you know what? I've had these issues my whole life. I've been fine. I got hairy legs, and just make a joke out of it and say, look, sometimes I forget stuff like Reagan, right? Reagan was getting that early onset of dementia or Alzheimer's when he was in office towards the tail end of his second term. And he would just constantly, I forget, right? And he made a joke of it, and he used his charm to get around things. I think Biden should try to do that. Can he? I don't know. I don't know if he has what it takes to pull something like that off, but it's going to be difficult. Anyway, I want to get to your calls. We've got calls coming in right now. I see Idaho, Ohio, Florida, West Virginia. Let's go to West Virginia. Bob, Charleston, West Virginia. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, they cannot find a single Democrat that does as well as Joe Biden against Donald Trump. That's their major problem. So they have to get Mr. Donald Trump off of the ticket. They have to get him off the ticket. They've been trying very hard. They've tried to impeach him. Now they're trying to put him in jail, but that's not even working. So somehow the only thing they can do, this is why they're freaking out. And these are Marxists, and they call him the Orange Hitler, the fascist. And AOC says, he's going to put me in jail and all these things.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
I remember.
Little girl,
I'd forgotten it. Thank you for reminding me. the things people come up with is really something. You're right, 100% right, Bob. This is they're scared, right? I mean, they really. I oftentimes hear people say, they're scared, and they're not scared. They're slick. They're Democrats. They're just like, watch this. I have to say now, they're scared. They're scared. They're disappointed. They're going to lose power. They know they're going to lose power. This is a big deal. It's a very big deal. They put themselves in this position, which is the craziest thing. Honestly, the craziest thing was to actually, they did this. They created this monster called Trump. Trump didn't have all this popularity when he ran in 2016. He beat them on a good campaign. But let's put him in jail and all this money he's raised, this is all because of them. They've created this thing, the rise with his popularity in African-American men. They did that. I mean, it's just amazing how badly they're doing things, and yet they continue to do it. So I think you're 100% right. And Trump even alluded to that in a rally he had yesterday. On the way back, I'll play that audio for everybody to hear. But I appreciate the call. Bob in Charleston, West Virginia, WCHS. Always good to hear from our friends in that part of the country. Folks, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Despite all the Democrat panic this week, the truth is it doesn't matter who they nominate because we are going to beat any one of them in thundering landslides. And this November is going to be amazing, going to be the most important election in the history of our country because our country's going down the tubes. That's a nice way of saying our country's not doing too well. We've never had anything like it. Our borders, our economy, the worst inflation ever. We have the politics on our side. We have the policies on our side that will make America great again, and they don't. They will only continue to destroy our nation. Our nation is being destroyed.
That is President Trump at his rally yesterday in Doral, Florida. And I think he's right. I really do. I think the Democrats are afraid. There is a panic. They know their candidate is unwinnable. And in politics, you have to be able to win, right? And in many things, right? In business and politics and so many things. If you can't win, you lose. That's an old saying. And, you know, if you're not winning, you're losing. And it seems like that's what's happening here. And for the first time in a long time, I see the Democrats shedding and abandoning their bravado, their hubris, their arrogance, and they're actually nervous. And good for them for being nervous. They should be. I want to go to Canton, Ohio, WNIR, check in with Debbie. Debbie, welcome. You're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
Hey, I just wanted to say that if the Democratic Party continues to boast Biden and promote him, and I will not vote for him. He's obviously ill, and it makes me sick at my stomach that somebody would actually make a sick old man run for president. He needs to get into a chair and relax. It bothers me. However, I'm not a Trump fan. Okay, I'll be honest. I am conservative. I'm from the red state of Ohio, so I tend to be conservative, but Trump is not my man either. So I guess for me, if it's down to them two, I won't vote for either one. But I will go and vote because politics is local, and I'll make sure I vote for all my local people that I want. And am I still on the air?
Yeah, I'm listening to you. Taking it all in.
I just want to say I want George Clooney for president. Thank you very much.
Well, Debbie, thank you for that. I think that, I don't think there's a lot of people that feel the way you do, but I think there is a number. I think there's a minority of people in the country that feel that way. And honestly, it's not even this election. It's every election. I think there are people that have historically, mainly the independents, typically feel that way. They're like, I don't like candidate A or B. I don't like the red team or the blue team. Crook A, crook B, they're all the same, right? This is what creates voter apathy. People don't even want to be involved in politics because they believe that I don't like this one, I don't like that one, and whatever. And I try my best to highlight issues all throughout, the year because I think issues are important to people. Some people are single issue voters. Some people are multiple issue voters. Everybody has a different angle on why they end up going to vote. And I can tell you there's a lot of people that just don't even care to vote. So you're not alone in that. And I know you want to vote. You want to be enthusiastic about a candidate, and you just feel like you can't be in this situation. My advice to anybody in that situation would be, I always say, in particular, since 2016, when Trump ran. And it's because I like Trump. I've always liked Trump. I was a little kid, and I thought Trump was really cool because he was this big New Yorker and this big character. And it was just cool because then he became like a staple in the rap community. He became a staple on television. I used to watch his show with my kids. I've just always been a fan of Trump. And what I find interesting is we have a level of pomp and circumstance surrounding our politics, which is fine. Honestly, it is. It's fine to always elect the person that is the most presidential looking. It's always, I think historically, other than Grant, we haven't had presidents that have beards, or Grant and Lincoln, because they think that it's, you have a better shot at becoming president if you're clean shaven. There's so many things that people opt for. And Trump broke a lot of those molds, right? He wasn't the guy with a good head of hair, solid white or, salt and pepper head of hair. He had orange, right? He's got that orange hair and that orange hue on his tan. And so many other things that he broke the mold on. And I think he came at a time when America needed a bull in a china shop. In my opinion, that's what we needed, because we were headed for this, what we got with Joe Biden. We were on the fast track to that. The problem is Joe Biden doesn't have the performance art that he doesn't possess that like Barack Obama did. Barack Obama was a rock star that appealed to people that were like, man, we got a black Bill Clinton. Fantastic. But the reality is he really wasn't, right? He was way more to the left than Bill Clinton ever was. And Joe Biden, even further to the left than Barack Obama. But Joe Biden fit that mold, that old, white-haired man that, comes across as the elder statesman. I was vice president. I was senator for half a century, et cetera, where people, can relate. And he had a degree of retail politics to him where he was used to getting into trouble and getting himself out of it using his charm. So that made him a good retail politician. And now that's backfiring spectacularly. The other side of this is I think Donald Trump has all those same qualities. He just delivers them in a different way, right? He's able to connect with people, but typically the ones that are nice to him. I don't think Trump is probably the guy that goes somewhere and they go, hey, I didn't vote for you. I don't like you. And he goes, oh, well, thanks, pal. I appreciate that. I hope you'll reconsider. He's not that guy. I don't think he's gracious that way. But I'll still vote for him. I'll vote for him because I've said in the past, I'm not voting for a pastor or a priest. I'm voting for a president. And when you look at the record, and that's the best thing Trump has going for him, is his record. When he can just say, hey, compare my record to Biden's. I really enjoyed the Trump years. I thought they were good for many reasons, right? Good for the radio show, good for many things. And in particular, it was good for people who didn't have a lot of money. They were able to earn more. The annual household income went up $6,500. You're talking about people who are now making a whole lot less because of Biden and because of inflation. So when you look at all that, it's like, to me, it's a no-brainer. You can't let your vote go to waste. You got to put it to good use, and I think that's with Donald Trump. Folks, we're coming right back. Debbie, thank you for your call, by the way. Coming right back. Rich Valdez, don't go anywhere.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Yet, all the fanfare we hear about Biden, he's terrible, he's this, he's that, he still has a fan base. That's right. Senator Alex Padilla from California was speaking with reporters today. Listen to what he had to say about Biden.
You can count them on two hands, the number of Democrats that have called for Biden to step aside. The vast majority have not done that. And I do think we are focusing on how best to work, how best strategically to work for the next 117 days, educate voters, mobilize voters.
What's he going to say next? You could count them on 2 hands and 10 toes. I mean, I've never heard that saying. You could count them on 2 hands. I've heard you could count it on 1 hand. That it kind of makes the emphasis that you're looking for. Anyway, Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat out of Oregon, he's also on the Biden bandwagon. Listen to him.
I will tell you what I'm telling my constituents at home. It was a very rough debate night. If you elect Donald Trump, it'll be 4 years of horrifically rough nights.
Yeah, rough nights for you, sir, for you and all your buddies that won't be able to continually rape America by giving every last dollar you can to some foreign country, lately Ukraine. And Biden today made some remarks as it's the 75th anniversary of NATO. And he gave this speech, and we have a clip of that where he says that NATO is now stronger because of him.
For 75 years, our nations have grown and prospered behind the NATO shield. Today, we're stronger than we've ever been.
Okay. So you've got Ukraine that's being decimated by Russia. Maybe not decimated. That's the wrong term. But being invaded, because I've seen the reports out of Ukraine where the nightclubs are thriving. They're doing better now than they ever had before. So things aren't so bad in Ukraine. But my point is NATO stronger because of Biden? Or is NATO on alert because of Biden? Yeah, I'm going to go with that one. Anyway, let's go to your calls. Let us go. Let me see. Let's go to Brad, Champaign, Illinois, WSOY. Brad, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. I just wanted to comment on that last call, Debbie from Ohio, I think.
Yes.
To say that I've heard people say that, well, I'm not going to vote for either one. So they should vote for Trump just for the fact that the other side it tried to throw him in jail, tried to take him off ballots. So that you're basically saying you're going to let a communist party win. Because at this point, that's the way I see the Democrat Party. I mean, their own candidates, they wouldn't even run on the ballot, like Dean Phillips and people like that.
Mm-hmm.
So why would you say, well, just because I don't like Trump, I'm going to go ahead and let a communist party win because I don't like the other guy? If nothing else, these people, I would encourage them to vote for Trump just because of what they've done to him to stop that kind of behavior.
Yeah. And, you know, Brad, I appreciate that encouragement. What I think happens in a situation like that, and again, I can't speak for anybody, but I can tell you that women in particular have been the target of a very specific campaign by the left within the media for a long time. And they figured out that Trump didn't poll well with suburban white women, right? This has been his weakness all along. And they figured out if they don't live in the big cities, if they live, you know, in the outskirts of a big city, if they're in a suburban area, white women, in particular educated, but not always necessarily, he doesn't always do well. And it's because of certain sensibilities that they had that other women in other parts of the country didn't have, right? Or other neighborhoods, if you will, which I find fascinating. But they wanted to continually paint him as somehow being misogynistic. He's been married 4 times. He doesn't care about women, right? As if Donald Trump was leading their famous phrase, the war on women. And this works, right? These campaigns work. They don't do it for no reason. They do it for the reason that these things tend to work. And when you have The View out there and all of this concerted effort to consistently paint Trump as something that he's not. And again, there are times where he may have been, right? I feel that he was appropriate when he said only Rosie O'Donnell, right? And Megyn Kelly, who's, you know, turned full circle on that. He had a big debate with her during the debate and for a little while after that. And she said, you know, you've called women, and he corrected the record and said, no, I've not called women pigs. I've called only Rosie O'Donnell that. And it was funny, but she had also fallen victim to that. And I think she's very astute and she's fantastic, Megyn Kelly. And again, like I said, she's come full circle on this. And it's because if astute people, an attorney like Megyn Kelly, somebody who's in the media, on the conservative side of things can fall into that line of thinking. Then you have this E. Jean Carroll nonsense that, again, tries to paint him as some sort of rapist, and they try to falsely claim these things. All of these things eventually stick one way or another. Not with everybody. I think you got a lot of people that go, oh, that's BS. I see right through it. But some people who have those sensibilities, in particular the ones that don't poll well, right? Suburban white woman who sees that and hears that and says, you know what? I don't want to vote for somebody who is constantly in the media. That they take the approach of where there's smoke, there's fire. And I'm just not going to do it. That's not a person I can be proud of to say that is my president. And the left knows this, and they go ahead and they hit that same pressure point over and over and over again, hoping that they will create a small fracture into a fissure, into a chasm, and have a bigger divide in the electorate. I don't know that it's working because I think it's going the opposite direction. He's probably closing the gap with that particular voting bloc, but it's still real, and there's still segments of the population out there that just don't see Trump as being the guy they want him to be. And he's never going to be all things to all people. But I agree with you. I would encourage everybody as well. Vote for policies. Vote for policies that'll shut down the border. Vote for policies that'll improve our economy. Vote for policies that'll make America safer. And all of those are a vote for Donald Trump. Brad, Champaign, Illinois, WSOY, thank you for the call. Folks, I pause right here. I come back for more calls. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue with your calls and more. Let's go to Pendleton, Oregon, KUMA, and check in with Monica. Monica, go right ahead.
Hi, how are you guys doing this evening?
Wonderful, thank you.
Excellent. Well, hey, I called the other night, and I feel like I didn't express my empathy and condolences enough for what you guys went through with your father with dementia.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very kind of you. Yeah, it's definitely brutal. Brutal, very brutal. I'm the youngest of my dad's 8 children, and clearly Head and Shoulders was his favorite. And as that disease took its course, my dad didn't even remember my name. He remembered me, but in a very abstract way. Like, he would talk to me about me, which was really interesting. But it was crazy to see a guy that, really, I was really his favorite. And it was just like, wow, man, the old man doesn't remember me. And it was tough. Not only tough on me, it was tough on him to see, how he had become so disassociated with his own mind. And tough, very tough to watch. But it is what it is. Thank you for that, Monica.
Exactly. Yeah, hey, thank you. With my dad, too. Am I still on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
you sure
great.
are.
Yeah, with my dad, I'm the only child, and I lost my mom to breast cancer, and my dad, he's always had kind of a dissociative attention deficit disorder, and he didn't get the support then that some kids receive nowadays. Well, Anyway, he started to slip, and after his new lady friend passed away, it just sent him into a tailspin. I've watched him his movements, like at the store, resembled greatly of how Joe Biden went to the podium. Then later, my dad lost his driver's license because he got lost somewhere in Portland. He was trying to come visit us at the coast, and finally we get him to our house, and we were shocked. The man was a skeleton, so we fed him, we bulked him back up, and he wanted his independence at his house here in Pendleton. So, okay, no problem. But then I get a call later down the line from a social worker saying that he's fallen, he wanders on the roads, and I had to make the tough decision and say, Dad, you're not safe anymore. I'm sorry, but you're coming home with me. So I got him on the plane. I picked him up at the airport in Portland, and he was pretty frail. It was bad, but he was just saying, well, I remember this, I remember that, and I was playing his music, his 50s music that he enjoyed, and he wanted to go to a restaurant. I believe it was Sizzlers or something like that. Like, okay, I remembered this. Then he wandered again, and my uncles came down to check up and say, hey. Then later on, got him home. He was able to maintain some independence on the coast with us for a while, but then this other final fall he had just sent him down, and it was like it wasn't my dad anymore. I did everything. I was working full-time as a caregiver at a facility, and
so you had some experience already working with people in this population.
Yes, sir. Yes, I've had 20 years off and on of experience, so I kind of already knew the protocols to keep them safe, and
that's very helpful.
Did so, and the thing that I loved doing for him the most was he started to gravitate toward the classical symphony music, the flow. So I would play that music for him. I'd lower him down in the bubble bath, and I'd give him a shave while I'm washing his bedding and just everything. And I would take him out in his wheelchair, which the cracks on the sidewalks didn't help matters.
Yeah,
We'd go take him to the restaurant. Everybody knew he was slipping, so they were very caring and compassionate.
Well, and that whole "it takes a village" approach is big, right? It's big when you're caring for any elderly loved one, but in particular, someone that lived their life with an attention deficit disorder. And that makes a lot of sense why the music worked for him, right? I live my life with music all day long. Like all day long, I have theme music playing behind me. The only time that there's any silence is during the commercial breaks, which I have to fix. Sometimes I play my own music while I'm doing that. But it really helps to regulate, right? When your brain's all over the place, music is super helpful. And it also is very helpful for people with dementia because it brings them back to a time that's very familiar for them, whichever time that might be. So for your dad, it was, when that music was popular for him. And it's very helpful, and it's good to know that. And I think something else you mentioned that you had experience, that's really good, because when you don't have experience and you don't know what to expect and to see how this illness progresses, it can be shocking, right? Because this is someone that you love that you're watching go through these changes. And knowing, I think, not to be cliche, but it's really half the battle. If you know what to expect, you know what's coming next, you know the phases of the disease and how it, progresses. And that's very helpful because outside of that, it's kind of like guesswork. And it could be a scary time, a challenging time, but, you still walk away with some beautiful memories. Anyway, Monica, I want to thank you for the call. I have to hit a pause right here, but we're coming right back for calls from Montana, Florida, Idaho, and more. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to it.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, folks, it is the speed round, so be quick and to the point so we get to everybody's call. Let's go to Eduardo, Tampa, Florida, listening online, richvaldez.com. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you for having Dr. Vince Callahan, because COVID made things worse for young people as far as mental health, including the crime after George Floyd. You got this Sacramento attorney, Susanna Wood, who's going to charge a target because they're calling about theft going on in their store. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I haven't heard that story, but nothing surprises me, especially out of the West Coast.
Yeah. Thank you, Rich. Have a good week.
Oh, you bet it. Thank you, Eduardo. I appreciate it. And let us continue. Let's go to Frank, Evergreen, Montana, KOFI. Go right ahead, Frank.
Hi, Rich. I'll be quick. I have a prediction. Because this winter, it's going to have a rotation around the Pacific clockwise this year. It's going to bring in weather change, which will bring a lot of moisture and more snow all through the continent. And so by the time the polls are here over the ballot boxes season, it's going to be slippery, and it's going to be a lot of crime on the streets because it's going to be dark on election day. It's a near moon. More crime occurs on a new moon than a full moon. Because it's so dark and scary.
Makes sense. And, right now we're enjoying the benefits of the sun setting at 7, 8 o'clock at night. But you're right. Come wintertime, it's going down at 5 o'clock, and it's the perfect cover of darkness for all of the shenanigans that we've seen, the Antifas and the pro-Hamas protesters. And it seems like it's all the same people, right, doing all the same stuff. But, yeah, Frank, good point. I appreciate it. Thank you for the call. Let's go to Paul, Boise, Idaho, KBOI. Go right ahead, sir.
Good evening, Rich. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
A lot of talk about with Biden. I think it's basically delay and deny. It's the deniability factor that you're going to say that you're going to continue to run for president, and by doing that, it gives you all the time in the world until you actually get back on and start stumping again, going from city to city. And I just don't see how he can beat Trump. I really don't. Trump's got more energy than the Energizer Bunny. I mean, he can play 5 rounds of golf in a week and still get his job done. I wouldn't be surprised if he has the equipment that he needs on the golf cart.
What's funny, Paul? Just now that you mentioned that. Trump called out Biden yesterday, and he said that he challenged him to a debate. And not only did he challenge him to a debate, but he challenged him to golf as well, which I thought was great. And $1 million donation. And I don't have time to play that audio now because it's like a minute, 10 seconds. But you're right? Trump is out there. He's on the golf course. He's still getting things done. Biden can barely get things done no matter where he is. And that's difficult. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and I appreciate your show, and you do a lot. You may not do a lot that's seen, but there's things that happen behind the scenes, and I know you're up to good, not no good, but good. And
well, thank you for that.
I'm sure the other listeners feel that way about you. So yeah.
Well, you're a gentleman, Paul. And I really appreciate it. You're very thoughtful. You're very kind. And I always appreciate your insight on the show. And with that, I bid you adieu because the music means it's time for both of us to go. So, Paul, thank you, sir. God bless you. And for everybody in America, hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I will be back tomorrow doing this again if the good Lord allows me to do it. And I hope he does. Yep, that's it. I'm Rich Valdez.